Welcome to another edition of Data Streams. I'm your host, Christian Chavez. I am a data center solutions cloud architect for Aspire Technology Partners. And with me today, my guest is Chris Kudlick from Cisco. Chris, introduce yourself. Let us know who you are and your role at Cisco.
Yep. Hey, everyone. My name is Chris Kudlick. I am a data center, or you could even say cloud infrastructure and software group specialist for Cisco systems. And so I support U.S. commercial accounts, more or less around the New York, Philadelphia, all the way through Baltimore, D.C. area. So great to see everyone.
Welcome, welcome. Chris, you and I had a conversation previously on one of our other episodes
Yep.
where we covered servers. I think we dove into the different server infrastructures that is out there. Keep in mind, our conversation is really about how to leverage cloud resources, get some optimization, not only from your on-prem perspective, but also leveraging cloud to augment what you have currently on today, and how do you realize those costs?
Yep.
So last time we had a conversation again about servers, but today I actually want to talk about the management of infrastructure. Today's world is riddled with so many things that are going on in IT, where we're kind of living in multiple areas, multiple locations, whether it's cloud, whether it's hybrid, with on-prem solutions as well as edge.
Yep.
Um, of course, we've had a lot of things change in the industry because of what I mean in the past 2 years, just how we consume resources as well as where our workers are at today, in terms of proximity with accessing some of this IT infrastructure. It's kind of built a lot of complexity in managing all these assets that are in multiple locations. So, I do want to touch upon that. So, with you being working at Cisco, I know you're seeing a lot of different things that are going on in your area. Can you give us a little synopsis from your perspective on what you're seeing today with people trying to manage all these things all over the place?
Yep, absolutely, Christian. So, at Cisco, we've actually been, I would say, a pioneer inside of this space. And I think it really began with our acquisition of Meraki. And so, when you actually kind of do an analogy, Meraki to the network is the way our Intersight product is to the servers and storage and virtualization, et cetera. And so the Meraki, platform has almost pretty much almost overtaken our enterprise networking in terms of being able to manage all of these devices, disparate devices all over the place. Could be remote offices, could be home offices, from a single user interface, which we've taken the customer experience into, as the key to making that software and that management platform the best that it can be, and basically having that as a service, but also, other form factors in terms of being able to manage. We've actually taken that type of technology and we've now put that into Intersight. And so with Intersight, the primary focus of Intersight is really to give the best customer experience. And how do we do that? Well, having an as a service, first of all, right? Because of the fact that most of our customers, if not all, and you can probably attest to this, but they're almost kind of as a service first,
Right.
even before cloud first, right? I think a lot of our customers were saying, well, everything was cloud first. And then if it had to be on prem, we put it on prem. Well, now our customers are saying, if I can do it as a service where I don't even have to worry about any cloud infrastructure, that's going to be my first focus. And then I can put things into the cloud and then I can also keep things on prem. So,
Right.
how do we deliver that to the customer? Well, we have Cisco Intersight. You can actually go to it, intersight.com. And that is our SaaS platform for managing UCS, Hyperflex, even some VMware and even some NetApp and Pure environments from, all over the world for the most part, right? Just by claiming the devices into the Intersight interface, being able to manage them, being able to configure them, being able to have a troubleshooting platform that is, very user friendly was really the key to doing this. And it's really a nice, software product, and it's really it's becoming the standard inside of the industry.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm seeing. So you mentioned one thing that I kind of want to hit upon is you
Mhm.
did mention Meraki, right? And to
Yeah,
me, Meraki is simplicity. I mean,
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's like you know real easy to manage multiple of wireless infrastructure, security, switches, and things like that. And I do see that being built in the platform. And I think having conversations with some of my clients, they're looking for that simplicity, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times I get caught in it when I'm having these conversations is like, hey, this is what, whatever products we're dealing with. In this case, we're talking Intersight and management of servers. I always tend to, and I try to catch myself is like, hey, have you ever used Meraki, or do you have Meraki if they didn't, or have you ever seen Meraki? Because I want to give them that thought of, hey, if you've ever managed Meraki, the simplicity of infrastructure management from that perspective is really, really nice, right?
Yeah.
So that same look and feel that you're getting from Meraki, or at least again, the simplicity aspect of it is the same, the same experience that you're going to get with Intersight. So I think Cisco's doing a great job in kind of, taking what they've learned from Meraki and bring it into the SaaS-based solution now that we know as Intersight,
Yeah.
and all the good things that are happening because I know there's a lot of good things that Cisco has, at least in their pipeline on what their vision is with Intersight. So
Yes.
yeah, I think that management aspect is key, as well as the simplicity of it. And so when it comes to the simplicity of the infrastructure, what is it do you think that speaks volumes when it comes to Intersight and managing multiple infrastructure resources? Again, we talked about edge, we talked about on-prem. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of hybrid cloud. What are some of not I don't want to say specific key features, but at least from a management perspective and a simplicity of how does that actually look like to the end user when they're actually managing server storage or cloud?
Yep. So great, great segue there, Christian. So more or less, let's take an example of a customer that, let's say they have 50 offices in 50 different states, for instance. Could be less, could be more. Could even be international. Well, the whole premise, the original premise, right, behind Meraki was, let's send out the kits to each of those offices, and we can color code them where this port on this router plugs into this port on this MS switch, which plugs into these APs, or these MR access points that you would basically put out for all of the wireless capabilities. And just claiming those devices into the Meraki platform from whatever state, whatever country you're in, to being able to manage all those from a single pane is really the key. And so we have that capability today. So if you needed one server in all 50 states, you can actually manage all 50 of those servers. Chances are they would be our rack servers. They're standalone rack servers. You can manage all 50 of those from Intersight from a single interface. It gives you all kinds of information around the hardware. It gives you any errors. It can tell you whether or not there's a power supply issue. It can even start deploying service profiles out to these servers, and it can even give support contract capabilities onto there.
Gotcha.
Um, and there even is some cool update things, which I'll touch on in a second, around how the whole feature set kind of works inside of Intersight. So if customers need new features, how that whole thing works. But the other piece of this too is Hyperflex. So imagine if a customer actually needs some data redundancy out in some of these offices. They can put a 2-node Hyperflex edge out, or they could put a 3-node or a 4-node, and they can actually just stand those up using the wizard-based installs inside of Intersight from anywhere. We even have some customers that have kicked off 50 to 100 offices at the same time,
Mm,
and more or less had them all up and finished within a day. So the power of the simplicity of actually being able to install from a single interface from wherever your headquarters is, or wherever you're located or sitting, um, because quite frankly, visiting all 50 states or all 50 offices is pretty impractical, right? And
yeah.
in terms of probably even the savings that you would get inside of travel would probably, I bet Intersight would probably come in way less than traveling to all 50 states. So
Right.
those are just, that's just one example. We got customers that have thousands of locations. We have customers that have a couple locations, maybe even one location. But the power of Intersight to be able to tap into that from the as a service is key.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, right? Where organizations now have the ability to deploy in mass, in multiple locations, and given that, again, the simplicity of being able to do that, and then just building what you need in terms of like profiles, right? We know about profiles and things that
Yeah.
are needed to actually deploy some of the UCS. But it's not just at UCS level either. It's you talked about storage. Storage is another one that's being integrated as well as VMware.
Yeah.
So the feature set isn't really specific. I wouldn't say that it's specific. Obviously, there's some UCS um, features that are very beneficial for an organization, but at the same time, being able to access your storage as well as your virtualization platform from that same interface, I think again removing the complexity and giving somebody the simplicity of managing all their infrastructure from one single pane of glass. And I think that's kind of key that's going on. And there is one thing that I want to touch upon, because
Mhm.
although again we're deploying infrastructure, we have visibility into the infrastructure through Intersight. um, there's another level of support that is actually needed, and that's being able to remediate any types of issues that should arise in your infrastructure.
Correct.
Traditional on-prem today means I got to call somebody, I got to call your support team, I need to provide them some information. I think what's really nice, and again, this is sort of something that Meraki's doing, and a lot of other vendors are doing this as well, is having this connected infrastructure to the backend support, right? So we have the
Yeah.
ability to actually, you had mentioned this too, like what if you're out of contract, or what if you have something that would come up? Having the access to your support team through this SaaS platform to be able to react a little faster if there is an incident in your infrastructure, right? You being able to communicate with them, and then ultimately having the information that they would need that they could pull. And I think at the very basic level, that really is kind of key overall.
Yeah.
Tell us more about how the connected TAC is what it's called.
Yeah.
How does that actually benefit clients that are using Intersight today, or a management platform like this today?
Yep. So great question there, Christian. So let's say we go back to the 50 office example. Um, Hardware does go bad, right? Cisco
Yes.
sometimes dims hard drives, motherboards, power supplies, cables, etc. Right? Things go bad in the hardware world, and if any vendors out there telling you that it doesn't, they're lying to
Yeah.
you. Ultimately, things will go bad, but it's what happens when those things fail or when those things die.
Right.
So and let's say if I'm in Delaware, and let's say my 2 node Hyperflex cluster in Oregon, let's say a memory DIMM goes bad. Well, in a normal sense, you might actually have to see that happen. Which, of course, there's a 3 hour time difference and all that stuff. But imagine having to fly out to Oregon if you don't have any local resources there that can put a DIMM in. Um, but imagine a connected TAC where TAC actually sees that happen. So if a DIM goes bad, it's automatically going to trigger a case into TAC, which TAC is our technical assistance center. It's where it's our first line of support at Cisco. And so if a ticket goes in, imagine being able to have that automatically, and then having that DIM on your doorstep within a couple hours if you have the 24 by 7 by 4 type of support, or maybe 8 by 5 by next business day. But imagine the proactive capabilities as opposed to reactive, where we've always been used to, like the example you gave earlier, Christian, where you go into your data center once a day, you look for red lights. If you see red lights or yellow lights, then that means it's bad. And then you have to do some investigation. You have to open up the ticket, and then the support has to prove that that's the issue, and then they'll send a part, and then you have to fix it. Imagine the proactiveness of that, and just having Cisco TAC alerted automatically, and not just that, but even if TAC can even get into some software things too. So let's say that there might be a bug, or let's say there might have been a BIOS crash or something. Being able to upload the log files, tends to sometimes be a pain point for our
Yeah.
customers. Well, inside of Intersight, it's pretty easy to do, right? You just
Yep.
actually take the log files directly from the device that's giving issues, and you upload them directly into the TAC case for the TAC engineer to start looking at. And
Yeah.
the other piece of it is the visibility that customers can give, technicians like yourself and I. So if one of your customers wanted to, give you read-only access, they can give you read-only access. They can give myself read-only access. They can give a Cisco engineer read-only access to be able to see what's happening in their environment as well, so that we can actually proactively troubleshoot, or assist them with any installation or expansion or replacement type of issues that might come up. So it's a really like powerful feature, and we're getting a lot of really good feedback on it too.
Yeah, I mean that's great because so there's a lot of conversations that I'm having, and I mean we're hearing some of these proactive as opposed to reactive scenarios that the industry is trying to move towards. Right, we hear of AI ops, we hear observability,
Hmm.
and all these are ways of getting to a resolution much faster. And a platform like Intersight gives you that ability, right?
Right.
It's not the end all be all, but I think it should be one of your strategic, methods inside of your IT operations anyway, where you need to incorporate some of that into this. Where again, your engineers or somebody that is looking at this infrastructure can be more proactive than reactive to a situation because at the end of the day, that reaction could cause downtime, and that downtime could ultimately be either brand recognition or it could be dollars to the business, right? And I
Yep.
think there's an impact there. So, to me, I'd like, although it seems basic, when I talk about connected tech, it seems basic, but in reality, I think that's one of the key features that I think when I have that conversation with clients, it really catches them and says, "Wow, like I don't have to do all these multiple other steps to actually get help when there's a situation in my infrastructure." And so I think it speaks volumes. Aside from all the other great benefits that are there, um, but I do want to go back to the piece where the integrations are starting to actually pile on top of this infrastructure, in this case, Intersight, right? But
Yeah.
as a infrastructure management platform, we talked about the storage vendors now that have now been onboarded or integrated, I should say, with like NetApp and Pure,
Yeah.
um, and having visibility there, I think, is key. And I'll even throw in the VMware piece too.
Hmm.
What other and I won't give it all, but what other integrations are you working on to be able to give infrastructure more visibility into what they're actually consuming nowadays?
Yeah, so I would say that within probably the next year or two, you're going to start seeing data protection integrations into Intersight. I would imagine probably from some vendors like Veeam, Cohesity, Rubrik, some of those type of data protection environments that go hand in hand with what we're doing inside of the data center. In fact, a lot of those data protection companies already have hooks into SecureX, which is kind of like our SaaS-based management platform
Right.
for security. And that's mainly because of the fact that if ransomware hits your environment, you don't want the ransomware to also encrypt your backups because you might have to restore from your backups in order to not pay the ransom. So, in terms of that, we have plugins already in the Secure X into like Veeam and Cohesity and some of these other vendors out there. But we're going to start seeing those probably come into Intersight within the next year or two. But some of the other things you can do is there's actually a ton of automation and orchestration that you can do from Intersight itself. Back in the day, we used to have a product called UCS Director, which was really an orchestration tool. You would create your workflows. If you are a customer that wanted to, put up a couple servers a day, it would probably be in your best benefit to create a workflow, create a service profile from this template, using this pool, setting up these zones on this MDS, which is our fiber channel switching, on those switches, creating a LUN inside of a NetApp or a pure storage environment. But we also have taps into other storage vendors like Hitachi and IBM, and even some into some EMC type of storage out there as well. And being able to just automate all of that into workflows in a graphical look and feel. And so we have
Mhm.
a bunch of plugins into some of our other third party vendors out there for that too. And being able to just do that very easily inside of a graphical interface with a backup plan if something were to go wrong is really key there too.
Yeah, and I think that's nice. Intersight was built, from APIs upwards, right? I think that's
Correct.
one of the great benefits in today's world, right? Everything about programmability and automation, leveraging those APIs through Intersight. I've done a lot of, some back end work with Intersight on the APIs, and they're pretty nice. So anybody who has some type of development that wants to reach into Intersight's APIs and get information and do some automation from there definitely has the ability to do so.
Yeah.
And with that automation piece, again, our conversation headed more towards the cloud initiatives that organizations have today,
Yeah.
in whatever fashion they're looking at that. In other words, where are they at in that journey? Ultimately, somebody has either started the journey, is in the middle of the journey, is already there, or maybe even coming back, right? So we
Yeah.
have a plethora of people doing so. What we're seeing is the mobility of applications or workloads that are happening inside of an organization, whether you're coming back from the cloud or moving to the cloud, or maybe you just want to consume multiple areas, and including down to where now, we it's not new, but the Kubernetes containers, things like that, or serverless, leveraging functions. So all these big
Yeah.
pieces that make up the applications or the workloads that businesses today are making money from. Ultimately, they need to get the best bang for their buck, and sometimes it may be in a hyperscaler, sometimes it may be on prem. So you have to look at that, but there's an aspect of moving these things, right?
Yeah.
And so having the automation piece built into a platform like Intersight, but at the same time, what is it? I know there's a component of Intersight that allows you to move some of these applications, or
Yes.
these workloads to hybrid cloud. Talk about that for us, because I think that's really key on some of these organizations that are trying to move some of these things out.
Yep, absolutely. So, the plugin that you're talking about there, Christian, is ICO, or Intersight Cloud Orchestrator. And so, a couple years back, actually, many years back, we purchased a company called Clicker, and Clicker
Sure.
was really the way to start moving different virtual machines, from cloud to cloud, or from cloud to on-prem, or from on-prem to cloud, cloud to cloud, on-prem to on-prem, etc. And we had rebranded it as Cloud Center, but it was the perfect opportunity for us to start incorporating, just what you were saying about being able to start migrating applications, containers, inside of on-prem data centers out to the cloud, or from cloud to cloud, etc. And so what it does is it really just takes that application, models that application, and you can deploy that application across multiple clouds if you needed to. So, for instance, if you needed, part of it spun up in AWS, you could just, click the orchestration key in ICO, and it just creates that in AWS. If you need it in Azure, you can do it there. If you need Google Cloud, you can do it in Google Cloud. If you want it on-prem on VMware, that's fine too. And being able to do all of that through ICO is really key. But it's kind of, I guess, where the development groups kind of almost intersect in with the operation groups as well.
Right.
So
Yep.
being able to give the developers that single interface that the operations teams are really looking at as well is kind of key here too. And that's, that kind of goes into those APIs that you were discussing earlier, because we know that having APIs, but not just APIs, but like secure APIs, out there for integrations into other third-party applications, or into different clouds, is really key to having a terrific SaaS-based interface.
Yeah, and I think that's key, because we do want to bring in those developers, right? We do want to make them feel like they have access, or at least some way to automate some of their workflows, without being hindered, right? So we give them an API to be able to do that, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we manage what's being done, because we don't want it to get too far out where we have multiple things running in all different kinds of clouds, because the developer is looking to do something that's out of the norm. So
Yeah,
you're able to now reel in what they're allowed to do, but give them the freedom to do so, right?
yeah,
Give them the ability of self service when it comes to their applications, and again, not hinder them. So I think that's kind of key, when you're providing a platform like this. Is it's not only just infrastructure, but you're also giving the developers abilities to actually do something more than just, again, typical is I need to make a request because I need some type of resource to be able to put my
mhm,
application on. Obviously, that can get kind of, full of red tape, but in this case, you're allowing them to do that, right? And I think that's where it's key. And I mean, I was a big fan of Clicker. I was a big fan of Cloud
yeah,
Center. Then the integration came with Intersight, and it just kind of packed everything right into one solid solution. And so, so here we have, you think of management platform, you're looking at something that's simplistic to be able to manage. It's API driven. We have a backend that's connected to TAC, or in this case, our support system, right? If
yeah,
you if you're looking at that, the ability to roll out infrastructure either in an automated way or just you just build canned profiles that you can go out and do, and then giving the developers an ability to be able to move clouds or workloads, I think is kind of like the overall aspect of management. And not only that, but I think the features, I think
Yeah.
the vision, I guess, right, of you had mentioned where Cisco's now starting to do some other integrations where we can then have that proverbial one pane of glass, if you want to call it that.
Yep,
But, uh,
exactly, and Christian, actually, to kinda go a little bit further into that,
yeah,
being able to deploy new features inside of Intersight is pretty phenomenal as well because we developed it on a CI/CD type of framework, and so there are places where customers can go in and start requesting features. I remember about, 9 or 10 years ago, Meraki used to tell the story about how somebody actually, like, when they were kind of in their infancy as a company, one of the engineers at a customer put in there, I wish that there was a pizza, that was delivered here. And within 30 or 45 minutes, the engineer saw that and actually had a pizza delivered to them.
that
Now,
is
we're probably not going to be doing that these days inside of Intersight, but at the same time, there is actually a little bit of a story that's kind of near and dear to my heart because a lot of our customers, as you know, at Cisco, we are inundated with information, right? You could probably find
oh yeah,
white papers or release notes on every single update or bug fix or anything that comes out. And you can get very lost in that information if you don't know where to go to find it. And so one of the things that we didn't have in Intersight for a little while was knowing when the end of support was going to actually start coming up for a lot of our items. So, for instance, the M3 chipset, which are all end of support now. Those servers, were around over 10 years ago. But
yeah,
imagine the M4s that are coming out, or had that the end of sale has been released, years ago. But now they're coming up on end of support and having to be able to see, all right, how many M4s do I have if I'm a customer? How many of these do I need to replace in order to, to keep under Cisco tax support? And being able to actually delve into the actual end of support or end of life notices directly from Intersight, we had a bunch of customers request that feature, and now we have it. So
wow,
that's just and it pretty much almost came instantaneously when you think about it. So, these features and the developers are continually developing on this, and there really isn't, anything that typically would need to, physically update, in any infrastructure in your environment to start taking advantage of these new features that are coming out for Intersight because it's a web-based SaaS interface. So the
yeah.
features almost become immediately available to the customer, which is just phenomenal.
And I will second what you said because I actually put in twice. I put in some feedback, and it was within 5 minutes. I got an email with one of the back end engineers who wanted to get on a call with me to review what I put in as feedback. And I mean my latest feedback was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Um, and so I put in some feedback, and you wouldn't think that somebody was paying attention on the back end, but they are. So definitely they're being very reactive to the feedback. So any feedback, I think it's awesome that they're taking all that into consideration. I
Yep.
can't
Yeah.
imagine how much feedback they get and they're actually answering. It's like, wow.
Yep. And it all really comes back to the customer experience, like, I mean, if enough customers are asking for a certain feature, it's definitely something that we should be looking at.
Yeah,
Something we should be integrating into Intersight if at all possible. And so, being able to put that customer experience first and foremost
yeah.
into the solution is really the key. And that's just one of many examples of that. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you gave me an idea. I'm going to try the pizza thing. And I'm gonna let you know how that works out, but I am gonna try the pizza thing. I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but I'm gonna put it to the test. But hey, I think this is a good place for us to end this episode. I appreciate your time being with me, and we'll look forward to our next conversation um, on our next episode. So see you then.
Yep. Sounds good, Christian. Thank you.